open D. Open D will save many a guitar neck, but before you think about that, you better think about how many songs will drop off of your playlist at the beer joint after you tune your guitar down to keep its neck right. Hey guys, welcome to Malibu, California, cultural capital of the world. It is a little bit after January 1st, 2025, and I got a number of projects going on today. This guitar comes straight out of Ventura, California, cultural capital of the world, and it is a 1956 silver tone Aristocrat. Oh, you see that? Venetian cutaway. Not a Florentine cutaway, but a Venetian cutaway. And this guitar has a couple of problems. You can see that it plays. I mean, it plays really, really good considering that it's got this floating system here. So, there is, wow, check it out. There are holes only in the pickup that floats here that's mounted to the neck. You see these pickups, I think they refer to them as Kent Armstrong pickups. So you typically carve a little bit of the neck away right below the fingerboard or the fingerboard, and you drill 2 holes and mount them there. Of course, you're going to want to drill a bit about that long to do that, but the whole idea is that you don't drill holes in the guitar to electrify it. It's got an awesome bridge. It's got an awesome tailpiece. And again, all of this stuff floats. So there's a mount here and a spacer at the top of the pick guard. And there's another spacer down below that gives you room to mount the input jack. I can look under here and see everything is floating by 3 or 4 millimeters, but there's spacers here that help you do that. A main thing about this is, let me tell you this, if you have your cord and you're walking along and somebody steps on it and it side loads this, that right there is about irreplaceable, and on top of that they tend to gas off and melt in the case, and then you haven't seen the guitar in a couple of years and you open the case up and everything is melted and it's down here. Fortunately, this guitar is a workhorse and it does a lot of work with a local Ventura artist. So the idea is, we know that its first problem is that it is not a Gibson 400. The difference between a 400 and an ES 175 was Florentine versus Venetian cutaway. But everybody was trying to imitate these cutaway bodies because you could get way down in here on the neck. Now, oddly enough, these guitars that don't have a truss rod, and the idea was, okay, let's pull off the fingerboard, let's pull off the binding, let's do all of that, let's put a truss rod in it, and let's completely ruin the value, and value to who, you say? Well, if somebody wants to play this thing and it's going to be their main guitar, well, then they might think about doing that. When you start yanking and cranking and flexing on things that haven't been flexed on before, well, guess what? Things don't always work out for you. So I want to do some common sense stuff before we get this to the bench. What is it that we really want to do here? Well, these frets way down here, the ones that you had to have this cutaway for so you could get way down in here, who does that? way down in here on a guitar like this. Nobody did that. So all the wear on this neck is up in here. Okay? So if you're pushing down on something, 1956, so 2006 would have been 50 years, 16. This guitar's getting on almost 70 years old. So if I'm doing this way up here for 70 years, and these little metal things that we call frets are the ones being constantly in contact, but nothing down here, does it make sense to you that these may be higher? Make sense? Yeah. Because they never got used. Next thing to think about is this thing has been toting the whole body around, and it might want to do this because of string tension. Now you don't want to crank this thing all the way up and leave it in the case for 5 years and then wonder why the neck is bowed and the action is high right here. But that has something to do with it. You also don't want to completely slack your strings off and put the guitar through hot and cold spells, because that way you won't have to steam off the neck. It'll come off by itself at some point. So there's a fine line between cranking the strings up and leaving them under tension and having no tension at all. Also, you've seen me, I may not have one around here, but we can pretend I do. You've seen those soap dishes I have that look like this. I put an Ocello sponge in it and drill through the prism holes and then wet the sponge, and the moisture out of the sponge comes out and goes into the guitar and keeps it hydrated. That's a good thing. Don't put your guitar in a 110-degree car with that dog and get arrested. Yeah, no. So, big problems with this guitar. Number one, the finish. Love the finish. What's left of it. What do you say that we do a reference to the Harmony Monterey, the herringbone Harmony, that we put a lac pad finish on, episode up there? Yeah, that's what that needs. That's what this one needs. So let's talk a little bit about finish. Finishes are pretty. Yeah. It's like sometimes they're deceiving. So how many of you see something that's got a great finish, and then the finish goes off and it's like, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. I know what I'm talking about. So finishes protect wood. Number one, finishes protect metal from rust. You with me? Okay. So the first thing we want to think about is, do we want this guitar to dry out and become more brittle and become more subject to flexing around and high string action and all that? No, we don't. So, a couple things. You look at where the action is. Here, it's right where it needs to be. Down here, it appears to be a little bit high. And there's a little bowl right here. Since there is no truss rod, we can't set the relief on that. So when we start fretting down here, does that sound bad to you? Well, guess what? To a guitar player that's moving their fingers around, that might sound terrible. So we might think about taking a fret rocker and taking a look at just a little bit coming off right here on these frets that have never been used. Might get that out of the way. But what I'm going to focus on is getting this guitar under a lac pad finish, in other words a French polish, and we'll see what it looks like. You may find it completely and utterly disamazing. Let's get this thing on the bench. Okay guys, first things first. I've told you about keeping your stuff straight. See this little wheel right here? No, you can't. It tightens up the vise right here. Yeah, Chick-fil-A Teal Pointer Jr., you are a hero. Anyway, canvas bag, luthier magnet in the bag. This hangs where you can get to it because these parts are irreplaceable. So we are going to start by taking the electronics off of the guitar, and that means we have to take the pickup off the neck, the pick guard off the body, and the bracket off the body. There's a grounding wire somewhere that's going to come up to this. It has to, and we'll deal with that when we have to, but I need to get things out of the way to work on the finish. I also have to take the strings off, which caused me to use my fancy stringy unwinder thingy. I also have one that is gyroscopic. I mean, let's do this. There we go. I don't want to assume that I'm just going to throw strings away. I see people that just cut strings, okay? Don't want that. Now, well, I still have a couple strings here. I'm going to know that I'm going to redo this finish or make it where you might not know where it's at, so where things are at. And that bridge and the intonation on that bridge is critical, so I can see that this spot on the F hole is just a tad north of where the bridge sits. If this were one of my guitars, I'd just put a dot on it and call it a day. But it's not one of my guitars, so therefore it actually has some commercial value. So there we go. Now I am just going to pop these and wind them up. And guess where I'm going to put them? That's right. Canvas tote. Remember this? Where'd those parts go? This guitar belonged to my great-great-grandfather. Yeah, no. Same thing with the bridge. Canvas tote. Now, I do not want this slapping down onto the top of the guitar, so I'm going to take a piece of paper towel, like so. I'm going to lay it down and fold it. Yeah, by the way, if someone suggests that this works for laundry and towels at your house, yeah, no, it does not. It's a whole different thing that I doubt you will ever master. Now, if you need to pull that card out because you bought one too many guitars this week, oh well. But there we go. Be careful with these ones that have this rollover. I've seen some Gretches break right there, and in fact, I had the Gretsch Electromatic episode. Where's my pointer? Anyway, it's right up there right about now. Guys in Westlake Village at the Guitar Center. Yeah, you know it. Anyway, so we got that. I'm actually thinking about taking this off right now because I'm going to have to do some finish work right there or it will bug me and I will need therapy. But there is probably a grounding wire right there, so I'm going to be really careful with that. Okay, guys, the screws are off. There is no grounding wire back here that I can see just yet. There's a lot of gunk right there, but let's take a look at this. Some of these old Archtops that have these fancy tail pieces, those things are going to want to split right there, typically. Like I said, I did an episode about a 1954 Gretsch Electromatic that had one of these missing. But I'm going to get in here with a light and make sure that that wire is not there. Let's do that. Oh, you know what? There's been work on this before. Somebody has had that tail piece off before. Anyway, what that means is there's a grounding wire somewhere else and I need to find that. Okay, before we move on, I've got some wide masking tape and I've got a piece of it, and I've got the 3 screws from the tail piece wadded up in there, and they are going to stick onto the paper that's holding the tailpiece. And yup, guess what? Right in the canvas tote. Now, we're going to be real careful here, because here's the issue on these pick guard mounted things. If you run the screw, this flathead screw, down too much when you are putting this back on, there's a beveled piece there, and you will wind the screw right down through the pick guard, and then so it's got kind of like it's kind of like it's countersunk in a way. So you just want to be really, really careful with that. And I'm going to get around on the side here and make sure I bring this off. I'm going to try to bring this all off in one piece. Let me see here. Yeah, let me see if I can do that. We'll get my head in the way. I can't tell if that's a flathead or what it is. I'll look in a minute. Anyway, you can tell here that this spacer right here, you see that spacer? Let's get the camera zoomed. And this long screw is what keeps the top of the pick guard in place. So I'm going to put that like so. It's actually a piece, I think, of surgical tubing you could use in the event that it's gone. And again, I'm going to use this, and we're going to put it in a bag. Okay. Now that slides out of the way there. Somebody has put tape on this before. I can see below. Hang on. I'm not liking what I'm seeing here. This has a nut on it that if it got lost, I would not be happy, because there's an F-hole there, but it's got this. It's actually a bolt. You can't see, sorry. Yes, there we go. Look at that. That's had some tape. And remember, there is a nut. Bolts have nuts sometimes. There would be a lock washer or some other type of spacer there. We're just going to get this out of the way. I have magnetic tools and they come in handy. I do not want to drop this. Okay. I'm going to put that on there. And again, guess what? Inside of tape, in the bag. All right. There is nothing grounding these strings to anything that I can see. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this off of the side of the fingerboard. I'm going to have to get around to the other side here because there's something sticking out that's odd. Be right back. Okay, let's be really careful here. I want to show you what I found over there. On this side of the fingerboard, there is no screw, but right here, there is, and it is kind of mashed over, if you can see that right there. So no screw there. That one's a little mashed over. These two on this side are fine. So I'm gonna get this turned around. I like this workstation. This is a StewMac workstation. Sometimes it's not everything I would like it to be, but most times it is. Make sure that everything is stable. So I can come over here now. And work. I do not like flat-headed screws. Okay guys, I'm sitting here trying to struggle with this size screwdriver. You don't want that. I've got this little set. You know the name. It's the same name that this workstation came off of. But I can use the right size and not strip this out, and what do you know, it's going to come right out now, and I'm not going to mushroom it out and have to be in here with the vice grips and something like that. And then I think I'll just replace these, and then I will put the old ones in the case so the owner can decide what they want to do with it. But there we go. All right, the two on this side. Don't put them screws in your mouth. Well, it's the only way to find out if your fillings are working. There we go. Again, piece of tape. That one wants to jump out. They always want to jump around and get away from you, and then you get frustrated looking for parts. And we put that there, and this whole thing is in one piece. Okay, so here we go. Let's start with the top first. What I want to show you is that underneath that tail piece, you can tell what things used to look like years ago. Right there, you see that, and then the rest of this is this. So the first thing we need to do is brush this off with something really soft and get any dust and residual that's off of it. And kind of what we're after here is a lot of this flaking off stuff. We need to stabilize that where it doesn't keep flaking, because whatever we put on it is going to get underneath it, and that problem is going to continue. So I've got this stuff here that I'm going to put on here because we can't get naphtha, and it will kind of clean some things off, and it will vaporize off, and then we can use this magic sauce that I know of that you have to agitate all the time. I'm leaving this bracket on here on purpose. I am still trying to figure out where they grounded the strings, if they did at all. There's just a bunch of grime on here that we want to get off. You see that? And this will take it off, at least the surface stuff. Okay. There we go. We're just going to work on the top right now. We've got this stuff, and what I will tell you that I've never told you before is the same thing I told you before. This stuff needs to be agitated constantly. It's like if you're going to be an effective classroom disruptor when you're a little kid, you have to be agitating constantly. But this stuff is so secret, Fred's not saying. So therefore, if I don't know, you don't know. But you see, look, agitate constantly. Watch what happens now. We're going to seal this up. This stuff is Did you know that they base the price of gold in comparison? This is actually the gold standard. Now watch what happens. I'm just going to put this on here. You see that little spot I just did right there? It's about 2 by 2. That's all. Look at that. Now you can tell when things start to get clean because this will squeak. I am going to be so buff by the time I get done with this area right here. You'll see. Yeah, we're going to spend some time on this, especially this area right up here. Now, what I'm noticing, look at that. We still got a long ways to go, but there is a split right there. It looks like it's starting to crack across the grain, so I'm going to go up underneath there and find out what's going on in there. This thing has tone bars, all these big bodies do, and sometimes they tend to collapse right there. You've seen me do a fix like that called an overpass or something like that. I'm not going to take this one apart, but you'll see them flattening out and then they'll flip in here. So once we get this all clean, we are going to pump some hide glue in there and make sure that doesn't go anywhere. Anyway, I'm still going. You can see right here that there's still a lot to do. But this is just wiping this off. It's already getting much better. Okay, now it just keeps coming along. Now, do not be freaked out. I've got 1,000 grit, wet, dry, in my little thing here. So I've got a piece of a nut. We won't get into too much detail. You can't have it. But I don't use just a piece of sandpaper on my thumb. I always use this because it will float along and take stuff, but I am keeping plenty of water on this, on the area that we were just trying to get clean with my magic potion. Now using this stuff, what it's going to do, it's also going to go into this area where the sand or where the finish is starting to come off in pieces, and it's going to stabilize that, because if that isn't stabilized, you end up every time it touches, your guitar touches something, another piece of the finish comes up. Okay, I can see now. I can feel where the tone bar is right now with this thing. So it's starting to cave in just a little bit on itself. It needs to be hydrated, which means a sponge in the case. We'll send it back to its home with a sponge in the case. But I want to show you here. It's not taking off any varnish or anything that's left. But it's getting to all this stuff. It's embedded into the finish. Okay, it's just real simple. 1,000 grit around something like this. Keep that sandpaper wet. Let's have a look. Wow, all in an area just that big. Again, the main thing about what we're trying to do here is we're trying to get the grime off of it, and we're trying to get all those little specks that are going to come off later if we don't get them flattened out. Okay, we are getting close on this little light sanding that we're doing. And it's getting to a fine line of, do we really want to sand anymore? Because especially like in this area here, it's going to be, are you going to just take it down and refinish it, or is that the idea? No, that's not the idea. But the thing to remember here is, look at all of this and how dirty it was and everything coming off of this. So I'm going to dry this up a little bit and take some naphtha, the artist formerly known as lighter fluid, and wipe this down. And then we're going to use our next secret ingredient to save this finish in its ugliness for the next millennium. This is dead. Still a lot of dirt coming up here. Okay, now remembering that we have only worked on the top, we have not worked on the sides or the back. There's some sticker issues that I need to address on the back, but I am going to do the next step, which is a sanding sealer, because I do not want to have more of this remarkably less than wonderful finish coming off. So we're just going to do a light sanding sealer coat like this, and this stuff dries off very quickly. But the idea is that we will put this on here and it will kind of build a little layer between the rises on this finish that's coming off and the wood. We'll kind of lock it in place so we can get off to the next wonderful thing we're going to do. A couple coats of that. All right, there we go. We'll leave that sit till tomorrow morning, and then we'll really get to work. But we're going to take 4 zeros. That's 0, 0, 0, 0. I'm ready for second grade. You're welcome. And we're going to go over and work this white spot out of here. Okay? So, don't be shy. It's not down that deep. Why? Well, because we have sanded this down. Now, you're seeing a lot of stuff come up here. And you're thinking, that might be finished. Well, this is not perfectly smooth yet. We're trying to make sure that the lacquer we apply goes down in there, that there's no jagged edges. See that? But this white stuff, in taking it off, has produced a bunch of mess. So what do we do with that? Well, the first thing we do is we take a magnet with some tape on it, because we don't want the magnet scraping across the top of a fine finish. So we just take the magnet, look at this, and we go along like this several times until, look at all that. That would have been in your finish. Now, we're going to have some paper towels. And we're going to wipe everything down like this. See that? Like so. Still dirt, okay? But this is the important part. We're going to take a paper towel. We're going to fold it. And we're going to focus on this area here. We're going to take some lac pad finish and we're going to put it on the paper towel. Watch carefully. We're going to come on like so and wipe once over that area. That's it. Leave it alone. Let it dry. Do not come in. Do not touch it. Just what's happening here is you've got a lot of lac finish on here, and it is going to drop in to these areas and build them up. This is like a drop finish where you're trying to get rid of some dents and stuff on the top, for example, right here where everybody's been playing it with their finger, I could fill that with clear lacquer and then work it over and finish it up and make it smooth. Now, pay attention to this. This is very different. This is how we apply a French polish, remember? Fine linen, wool, sock tip works best. Wool has to be wool, and cotton inside, rolled up into this nice and smooth, no creases here, okay? And we are going to squeeze this because it's been charged with the same lac pad finish and a couple of drops of grain alcohol. Do not put, regardless of what anybody says, olive oil, any kind of other oil in here. Don't do that. There's no reason for it. Now, this area has been done, like this one. This stuff vapors off. It's a spirit finish. But I'm going to take this. See, my hand is wet now. You can see liquid coming out of here. Make sure there's no creases. You can hear it. And then take this into an area that you've done already. Glide on. Do not plop on. Do not put your finger on it. And just do this. And you're going to feel it sticking to itself. You just go around and do circles. Like I said, you can tell where you've been because the polish is going to try to stick to itself as it dries up. You can push down, make sure you don't have cracks and stuff that you're worried about things being structurally deficient, and then sweep off. Leave it alone. I would leave this sit for a couple of hours, and then it's a slow, tedious process of doing this over and over and over, almost as many times as you have wondered why your mother-in-law invaded your life. That many times, do it that many times, and then more, to end up with something that is this horrendous, but this shiny. This, my friends, is the after. Alright guys, after a couple of hours, it starts looking like that. Okay guys, we are at the part where we are going to run a grounding wire, which means we have to pull off this tailpiece. Check that out. Now, flathead screws, which I really don't care for, but we're going to put them back. Whenever you're working on something like this, keep everything on a piece of tape. You don't want to drop these on the floor and lose them. Keep everything together. Anyway, I'm going to take a look here. I think that there's a hole here that has been the result of something being off. Yeah, right there. I can use that hole, enlarge it just a tad, and run the wire over to here and route it in a way, and then I'll use a color that kind of doesn't stick out too much, matches the theme of things, and I can run it all the way up here. So that's what's going on now. Okay, so while you're feeding the ground wire, it needs to end up over in this area right over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a special tool made by Corelli to fish this up here. And in order to do that, every time you go in a little bit, you're going to bend it off this way until you see it. And then you're going to reach down with the tool, said tool. Voila. Now we're going to pull this over, and that should be enough right there. Trust me, you are going to want to bend this and do some kind of, if I was at a Texas rodeo, I'd be going like that right now. I learned this luthier technique from roping cattle in Texas, cultural capital of the world. And now I'm going to cut this right here, give myself some slack. I'm going to expose the wire and pull it back for a couple of loops. Then I'm going to use an awl, which is very different than an owl, and I'm going to wrap this around here like so, and now that nice little circle will come up here where everything mounts, and I can push this down and it will be perfect as usual. And then finally, while we've got the camera right here, the original floating bridge is here. You can see it's up a little bit. We worked down the frets just a tad. Remember, because on this end, they never got played. So after a while, 1956 to now, the neck is going to bow up. It's got no truss rod. So we are going to put the original bridge in the case. The person can put it back or not. We're going to use this fancy one that I got from my friend Joel in Massachusetts, who sold me a bunch of Bakelite bridges and stuff like that from his collection. But that's pretty sharp, and I think that this guitar deserves something like that. And between how high this one is there and this, we are going to have to cut something down about that much, and that will put us at 0. And I think what's going to happen there is we'll just take that from right here, because this already fits this Archtop with no gaps almost perfectly when we put the big heavy strings on it. Okay, so we've got the new bridge on and we're doing the final detailing. We know where it goes. We've placed this piece of sandpaper here, taped it down. It matches the radius of the Archtop. We know where it goes by measuring from the back of the nut to the middle of the 12th fret and then taking that measurement down to here. Now we're just going to just go back and forth until all the air gaps disappear from under the bridge, because if there's any pressure points, in other words, air gap here equals pressure point equals crack. So this is how you do that. And the action looks pretty good already. This bridge is bottomed out, so when we get it to the point where the action is where we want, then we just raise it up. Good to go. All right, there's a lot of grime on the pick guard and the headstock, so we're going to use this magic potion to come along and make sure it's all cleaned up. And you can hear it squeaking. That means things are nice and clean and it's shiny. Listen to that. There we go. Okay, before I start getting the final details put back together, I put a piece of tape around the kick out of the F-hole right here. They tell you that this little indent is where the bridge goes. That's not always true. So I've put a mark, which is right at the edge of that tape right there, and we're going to put that at the middle of the 12th fret. Yep, there it is. We're going to check it on both sides. There we go. Perfect. Now we're going to take, you can either do it one way or another. So you're going to put that mark at the middle of the 12th fret, and then you're going to look at the top of the bridge, the arch of the bridge, and make sure that that's in the right place. And then you're going to go to the other side and do the same thing. And this one needs to come back just a tad. There we go. One more time, middle of the 12th fret, crown of the bridge. Other side, middle of the 12th fret, crown of the bridge. Then we're going to bring it up. I'm going to do open D. Oh, by the way, if you're doing fret work or leveling or something and you put something in the middle of the neck to support it, and the neck is not hanging freely like this, you're going to be going on and on. You'll be filing frets until the end when you figure out I can't create a pivot point here. So just remember that. Completely off track as usual. So this is also going to be a D. Then we're going to fret at the 12th fret. Ooh, they all sound the same. Then we're going to take, on this piece of tape that I put here, we're going to mark the point where that fleur de lis or whatever it is there is pointing directly at that, and then the artist will know when you take the bridge off, you might need to tilt it one way or another to bring that 12th fret tuning right, tilt it one way or another. And then on my junky guitars, it don't matter, I would just put a dot right there, but that will be up to the artist. Once it's done, they can just pull this off. Now it is time to get on to putting all the electronics back, and we'll finally make use of the ground wire we pulled off of the tailpiece. I think we'll take a minute here and while we have the opportunity, get some of the grunge off here that's built up between 1956 and today. And remember, this, some of these bridges in this configuration float off of the pick guard, where this one bolts into or screws into the neck over here like this, and there's some holes there. I think we're going to make sure that those screws fit nicely, and then this fits over here, and we're going to clean this up a tad, but this wire needs to go to the back of one of these potentiometers. So that's pretty boring stuff. This is all original stuff. There's a piece of padding that was here held on by tape so it doesn't hit the top, and if we look at the top of the guitar, we'll be able to see where that was. And then of course we've got the screw holes where all of this matches up, and we're going to be good to go. Okay, I almost forgot. I'm going to use a set of these male-female connectors to hook the ground wire to the back of the pot. If I run a straight wire and solder it, then you have to unsolder it every time you want to take the electronics off. So, short piece of wire running from one of these to the back of the potentiometer, and then the other one going to the grounding wire that's running to the bridge. Then you can just do this anytime you want to service the electronics. Okay guys, quick close look. Everything is self-contained here. I think that ultimately a problem is going to be when you're plugging your cord in here. If the plastic starts to split on the pick guard, I think it would be good to reinforce this at some point. Maybe something like carbon fiber paper glued on. Who knows what that is. We're going down the path here, but you can see where the shiny spot is, and this is a quick release connection that I can put together here in case it ever needs to come off the guitar again. There we go. All right, guys, I am doing French polish. We're going to let this thing settle into itself. It's got a bridge. It's been sanded down. It's been strung up again. We're going to put a new set of slinkies on it. I would really like to see strings on here that were up in the 56 down to 13 or range or something like that, but we're going to let the artist figure out how to do this. If it were mine, it would be tuned to open D all the time, and we would let the old thing take a break. You remember French polishing? You wipe it on, and then you go in circles, and then you come off like this. We've got 100 coats we could put on this, but you just keep going around in circles. You'll feel it pull back on itself, and every once in a while you get a white spot showing up where the finish is saying, hey, there's a little bit of moisture here, or something's going on here. Anyway, you just keep doing this, wipe off back in the container, and that sure is ugly, but look at that thing shine. So it has been my pleasure to work on this thing. It's got quite the story behind it. There were some stickers on the back that went in the case. We put a new floating bridge on it. It is set down quite a ways. I didn't cut any grooves in the bridge, so the artist can decide what they want to pull it down to, if at all. It just depends. But again, what started this is there's a little bit of buzz going on because this part of the fingerboard barely gets used, and of course after, well, 56, 66, 76, 80. Well, this thing's 4 years older than me, so yeah, it's getting on almost 70 years old. Oh, I know. Trust me, this doesn't just happen. But I am going to get this back to the artist very soon. It's going to be cool to listen to him play it, and I have really enjoyed having the opportunity to look at this part right here, where everything is contained on the pick guard, and there are no holes associated with anything other than the attachment to the size of the neck on this, what's otherwise a floating pickup. It's amazing what people did to make things look like a Gibson Super 400. So we'll get this back. We'll get a little footage of Milo playing it, but I'm going to go back to French polish, and I can't stop. Thanks for hanging in on this long episode. If you see something like this and it appears to be in okay shape, think it out before you start ripping it apart. And you know, a little crack here and there isn't going to matter much as long as you got a little hide glue and some time. I will see you next time.